G'day, we're live. This is Xenium Pro today, and I'm your host, Scotty North, and we're talking about all things accounting practices. Yeah, that's right, at Xenium Partners. It's our goal to make accounting practices more valuable, more profitable, easier for their partners, and all that sort of good stuff. And of course, to do that, we've got a whole bunch of special tools that we'll talk about in this show and many others to come. However, today's show, I've got a guest, which is always good because I love having guests because it means you don't have to look just at me, right? And, well, apart from my wife, who wants to do that? So, I would like to introduce a young man of the industry. We have here yeah, David Smith is the founding director of Smithink. Now, David, I'm going to read this out because I think it's worthwhile reading. So before you give me a rebuttal, just hang in there, mate. Okay. So you're an
No
external
worries.
practice advisor to many firms, participating in firm management activities to provide an objective viewpoint, understanding of strategies. You undertake detailed practice reviews for those wishing to acquire practices and deal with succession issues, which is obviously very important in the accounting firms. You improve strategy and efficiency and/or technology. All right, you can conduct due diligence and reviews of practices being acquired. And for 16 years, you're a partner at PKF, which is now BDO, Sydney, and you created a significant software business and you sold it to MYOB. Um, uh, and you're a regular speaker on topics relating to the future of the accounting profession, business strategy, process improvement, and innovation. All right. You're a generally all round advisor and good guy. I think I added that bit in there, but I think it's worthwhile saying as well. Welcome, David. How are you going?
Good, thank you. Not everyone would say I'm a good guy, but I'm glad you do.
well, well, it's good. It's good. It's good to say. Good to have you on. Now, I had to read that out because you might not know, but I do another show called Xenium Live, which is all things money, finance, and property. And I'm kind of across that sort of stuff. But when it comes to accounting practices, I really like talking to people like yourself and other guests on because I don't have a clue about this stuff. So I am just, I'm bottom level and I can come in as a total greenhorn and say, okay, show me the way to go. So tell me a bit about your background and obviously you didn't become straight from school, so to speak, and start advising accounting firms. How did you get into this?
Well, I've been around a bit. So I think this is my 51st year in the accounting industry. And so typically I left school and as people did in the 70s, I did part-time university and learnt my trade as an accountant. And I basically over the years worked in virtually every facet of the accounting industry until in 1999 when I left my firm. And that was because the software business that I created, and we had about 6,000 customers when we sold it to MYOB in 1999, and I left and worked with MYOB there for a couple of years before I then went off and created my own consultancy. And the consultancy really came out of the fact that I had a bit of a reputation in the accounting industry as being the technology guy. So a lot of firms wanted to use my sort of knowledge and skills about what they should be doing in taking their own technology forward. But since that time, I've really morphed into being a broad-based practice management coach and external chairman and really helping firms more generally. So over the years, I've just garnered a whole lot of knowledge and experience, which I'm able to share with others.
Now that's good. So, as a matter of interest, in 1999, the software you provided to accountants was it a calculator?
No. So I had, I wish, funnily enough, in my accounting firm when I joined it in 1972, they didn't have a calculator till 1974. So calculators are very interesting things. But no, the software that we created, I actually created the very first company statutory record software and the very first self-managed superannuation fund administration software. We were competing head-to-head with BGL that still exists.
Right.
But we sold that business, as I say, to Solution 6, which is now part of MYOB.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, so uh, we're going to start some basic stuff. I'm going to start at the beginning, right? Because as I said, I'm not an accountant. So,
Yep.
what are some of the things that you go in if you go in to advise an accounting firm? And let's just say we're not for acquisition or sale or anything. It's just to say help them better their practice. What are some of the things you do when you walk in? And is there certain things you look at, or is it just sit and listen, or do you ask for a set of documentation to see their processes? What do you do to start with when you advise someone?
Principally, I want to talk to the people because they're really people businesses and understand the mindset of the partners, the other leadership team members, and the staff at large, and ask them a whole range of questions about what's working, what's not working, what's frustrating them, what are the things that they're trying to achieve, and then from that, help them craft what might be the sorts of things that they should think about to improve their service offering, improve the way they engage with clients, improve the way they manage their workflow, their resources, their people, their marketing, and the like, to help them build a better business. So I always say that unlike some consultants, if I can put it that way, I actually don't have a plan when I walk into a business. Really, what I start off doing is a fishing expedition to find out what the issues are, and then we start working on them. I'd much rather do that than force people down through a particular process which may not be appropriate for them, may not be addressing the particular issues that are of concern that they need to address.
And is there that's? I mean, I think that's a really good way to go. I mean, I think the best advisors are the ones that start with an open book, so to speak, or an empty
Yeah.
page. And I think that you're totally right on that. Just in terms of a procedure. But is there anything that you walk into a practice that you get asked to advise on or come and have a look at? Is there one or two or three things that are generally always in practice that need to change or improve?
You remind me of one of the consulting assignments I did a few years ago, where I was walking into a practice and they wanted me to do a practice review, and I started doing it, and the guy just held me up and said, "Look, we're the same as every other accounting practice. You don't need to do this process. Just tell us what you tell everybody else because it's going to be the same stuff." Now, to a certain extent, there's some truth to that. But there's always nuances for each individual particular firm about how they can do things better. And there's, again, as I say, it does depend on the particular circumstance of where we end up. But one particular issue that I think is of great importance is improving the way that practitioners engage with their clients. One of the things that I've done regularly over the years, and I get engaged to do this quite often, is hold what I call client consultative groups, where I get around about a dozen clients from the firm into a meeting room, and we sit there for an hour and a half, and I workshop them about what the firm's doing well, what they're not doing well, how things could be improved. And then at the end of that, the leadership team comes in and has a beer and turns it into a social occasion. But the interesting thing out of that is that the overwhelming piece of feedback I get from client after client after client in doing that exercise is that they all say to me the same thing. Why doesn't my accountant proactively tell me stuff that's going to either improve my business or improve my financial position? And I think this is a core concern for many accounting firms. We are bound up in the compliance process. In other words, getting all those tax returns and sets of accounts done. And that's a very deadline-oriented business. I actually call it the compliance vortex, that you get so wrapped up in that, and that bits of work have to be done, that so often all this other stuff that the client really wants help with in terms of their business and their personal financial position
Yes.
doesn't get addressed because the accountants are stuck in the compliance vortex. And so that's where I try and break past that and give the accountants some ideas about how they can engage better, how they can change their processes around to ensure that the compliance vortex doesn't get them, and so that they do have the capacity to be able to do that extra work that the client's looking for, so that they can be that proactive advisor that the client really wants to see and experience.
And I think that by you taking a group of clients and sitting them in a room and asking questions of the clients of how they, surely that is far and beyond what most firms would do anyway. I mean, how many people actually put their clients in a room and ask them those questions? I mean, that's got to be the start of good change.
I think so. Interestingly, a few years ago, I tried to sell software that does client surveys for accounting firms. This is way back before SurveyMonkey. And I was completely unsuccessful in selling that software, because accountant after accountant after accountant says, I don't want to survey my clients. I know they hate me. So I thought to myself, that's an interesting problem. But at the end of the day, that's an overstatement. Clearly, there's a lot of firms that are doing a lot of really good stuff.
Oh dear.
We need to make certain that we do understand what our clients are thinking and what they want from us. But more importantly, we're engaging with them to really understand what's going on for them. And to make certain what we're doing for them is being positioned appropriately, and we're not missing out on something which is quite critical to the client.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm hearing is one of the first key steps is obviously you take an assessment of their organisation, all that sort of thing, but naturally there's a focus on communication with the client, and that's either what the client wants to say back to them, or communicating, as you said, how come my accountant doesn't tell me stuff, right? How come I've written that down here? So other than, is that because most accountants just ring up at tax time, or don't even ring, or they take a phone call at tax time and it's hey, we've got to do tax this year, give me your receipts? Is there something, we need to move beyond that to be a proactive and successful accounting practice?
Absolutely, you do. But there is another element here, and that is that industry, a bit like the whole of Australia, it seems at the moment, is heavily resource constrained. And so there is a lack of quality people. And for some reason, it was bad enough before COVID, but it's acute now. And so what happens because of that, you've got this tax work that, the ATO says you've got to get this stuff done on time. And so that tends to take priority, and these other things get pushed aside a bit. And yet from the client's perspective, yes, they do need to get their taxes done. This other stuff's really quite important to them. And we need to make certain that we're addressing it. And part of the challenge is the client themselves don't really know what their needs are until the question is being asked of them. There's an element of education here for the client to realize how important some of this stuff is.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to have this sort of way of structuring a discussion with the client to do this discovery, to understand really what are the things the clients are concerned about, and whether or not they've positioned themselves appropriately to deal with that, or whether they need some help, or they need to do things differently.
Yeah, okay. So that then leads to my next question, which is, you very much touched on it without even me asking. Accountants are very, to me, seem to be time poor, whether that is because they are simply focused on doing what you said with the time deadlines with ATO and other bits and pieces, or whether maybe the margins aren't there to put on support staff to free them up. But how do you create capacity and to free them up and to do growth? What strategies around that?
Well, the first issue is at least have a capacity plan. So you need to understand what your position actually is in respect of capacity. And so you've got to do what I call a bottom up and a top down. A bottom up capacity plan looks at all of the staff and says they've got so many productive hours, they're going to achieve this level of productivity, their charge out rates are this, and you build up how much production you can actually generate. And then you compare that with the fee base of the firm and look at how much fees we can sell to our clients. And the difference between the two is either a capacity surplus or what's most common today is a capacity shortfall. And so, we need to deal with that. This is sort of an anecdotal thing over the last 30 years in talking with firms. I get the same answer nearly every time when I say to firms, if you look at your fee base and you think about the needs of your clients in the fee base, how much extra work do you think there is in your client base if you could have the time to unlock it? And the most common answer I get out of that is 20%. And so they're saying that 20% of their existing fees, they get increased by 20% just by engaging with their clients better and unlocking that opportunity. And so the problem is, in most accounting firms, they've actually got either a shortfall of capacity or only a very small surplus. There'd be only a handful of firms that are running at 20% capacity. Now, there's some of the reasons for that is I can't get the staff, but also, if you've got 20% free capacity, practitioners get worried about they got staff. They might have staff sitting there with nothing to do.
Yeah.
And that impacts profit, obviously. So we need to make certain we've got processes in place that that free capacity is spread over the whole year, not just in different pockets of the year. And secondly, that we've got a regular process to ensure we're engaging with each and every client to unlock the opportunities, in other words, the client needs and other things we can be doing for them. And in doing that, we're A, filling the capacity, B, we're making our clients happier, and C, we're making more money.
Well, making more money, I'm sure, is always what drives some people.
Well,
in terms of accountants, though, but it doesn't drive all of them, right? And I've had limited experience with accountants.
It doesn't drive all of them. And in fact, it's a bit like a plumber with fleeky pipes issue. There's, to the great credit of the accounting industry, they are very focused on trying to do the right thing by their client. And so quite often the practice itself will suffer just to do the right thing by their client. And, you've got to give the profession at large a bit of credit for that. Yeah. But the funny thing is, whilst there's a focus on the client, it's still often about tax and accounting compliance. It's not about trying to engage with the client to unlock all of these other opportunities and meet all these other needs the client may well have. And that's where I think there is quite a failure in many firms, to have that regular engagement. Now, I think the answer to that problem is that the compliance vortex, as I call it, that's not going to go away. That's always there, that you've got all this deadline pressure and stuff from the ATO. So you just got to live with that. But the issue is we need to make certain that we've got space to have these, what I call needs review discussions with clients. The best way to do that is to embed it inside the compliance process, because the tax and accounting compliance process must happen every year for every client. It's just part of what has to do to comply with all the ATO laws, etc. So if we embed it into that compliance process, and like when we get to the client sign-off meeting with the tax returns and financial statements, why don't we do the needs review or the discovery process then? And if you embed it into that meeting, what you're then doing is ensuring that every client is going through that needs review process every year. And if you do that effectively, you will, A, generate more work, but B, you'll be helping clients with issues which are very important to them.
Okay, so I think you're touching on the important points there. I mean, money's not the driving factor for accounting firms, but looking after the client is. And you're saying often it's to the detriment of of the practice themselves. So if looking after the client is their focus, then they get so focused, to me it sounds like, on the doing of the work. They're not even communicating properly. They're not looking at the practice planning, all that sort of stuff. So how do you work with them to do, say, workflow planning? I mean, does this cause issues with cash flow for accounting firms? Is it just everything comes in September after July taxes, or like how does this work?
It can for some. And so some firms which are relatively unplanned will have peaks and troughs through the year. Firms which have what I call a resource plan, and a resource plan is when you're saying this client is going to be done by this team member and it's going to be done in September and it's going to take that team member X number of hours. And you get the client on the bus and talk to the client and get them to agree the month that they want their work done. When you start planning your work out like that, what that does is give you the ability to have faster turnaround time, because when the work comes in from the client, you've got the team member ready to go and you can turn it around quicker. But equally, it's creating free capacity across the entire year so that you can have this regular engagement with clients to ensure you're having these discovery sessions and unlocking the other things which are important to clients that sort of need to get done. So in my mind, that's the sort of why resource planning is such an important element. And you get the spin-off effect as well. The team members like it, because team members now have got know what's coming down the pipe for them, what the work they're doing next. So what I've found is that team members quite like that level of certainty as well. So that's another benefit. And it also means when the work comes into the business, we're able to ensure we're allocating the work to the team member at the right level. One of the problems that can happen if you have an unplanned workflow is that you get an avalanche of work coming in, and all of a sudden you've just got to allocate it to whoever you can. And that can often mean that it's allocated to someone too senior or too junior, and that can mean that you're not going to recover as well as you ordinarily would.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that's a problem, because everyone wants to feel like they're getting their documents and taxes done by the head honcho, when in reality, it's one of the apprentices can do that, right? I mean, I don't know if it's apprentices.
Well, they can with good processes and good
Correct.
review systems and all the other pieces that need to be there.
That's right. I just think it's funny that and this is the problem, and there's a couple of problems I'm going to talk to you about here with accounting firms, but, we can get online and do some sort of automated document creation thing or whatever, but when we go to our accountant, he has to do it. He can't give it to the one straight out of uni. I'm like, well, hang on, Dick. That's double standards, right? I just went to an automated robo blimmin' online thing and got it, but hey, my accountant's got to do it. He can't give it to his helper. That doesn't make sense. And the other issue I see from a retail consumer type perspective is that the ATO doesn't seem to give any heads up to accountants and accounting firms, right? So they just put something new on their website, or they make an announcement, this is happening, or we're chasing this, we're doing this with trusts, or we're changing this rule here, or there's this grant or whatever, and all of a sudden we hear about the same time as them. So they must get absolutely inundated with people like me going, hey, I've just been on the ATO website and they reckon I can do this now. And they haven't even had a chance to look into it and get advice on it. How do you manage that from an accounting perspective?
Yeah, it's a really interesting problem, because during COVID, that was a really big issue, that, governments every 5 minutes was coming out with sort of new assistance for business all over the shop. And then accounting firms are getting inundated with saying, well, how do I apply for this? How do I get it done? So, what again needs to happen is that this is all about process. This is about accounting firms structuring themselves to ensure they've got the free capacity to be able to deal with that, and to also ensure that they've got the right engagement for clients. So we can actually do a bit of one-to-many. If you look back at in that COVID period, many firms were running very regular webinars and those sorts of things to be proactively on the front foot, But because it's impossible to talk to hundreds of clients all at once, they were using the sort of webinar style way of engaging to try and achieve that. Some firms as well went to the extent of creating their sort of COVID assistance expert, so that they had somebody who is had all the expertise about all of those changes which were happening every 5 minutes, and was available to be able to deal with the issues. So all of the other people in the firm were not overloaded by that. They could get on with the rest of their work, and that one person was dealing with those issues.
I think that's a good idea. I think that was a really smart move. One last question on the accounting firm thing, and then I've got some other stuff to talk about shortly. But that must have been really rough for accounting firms in the whole Corona event thing, because the world stopped. There was all these new government incentives and packages, like you mentioned. So every self-employed person and their dog was saying to the accountant, "What do I do?" Like you just said. And accountants are working flat out while the rest of the people are on their paid holiday, and not actually generating large amounts of money in a lot of businesses. So there's this sort of, the accounting firms are racking up bills, the businesses aren't earning money. Has that come out in the wash now, or are accounting firms still working through that?
Well, because of the resource constraints, things are still pretty tough from a resourcing perspective. It was interesting with the COVID thing that it depended on different firms in different locations on how they were impacted. Some firms who are in tourist areas suffered more than most, because half their clients shut down almost overnight, whereas other firms in other jurisdictions or locations where it wasn't so tourist oriented weren't quite as bad. So there was no sort of commonality about it. But it's also fair to say that whilst there was a lot of work and a lot of pain through that period, clients were very, very happy with what the profession was as a whole doing for them. And I think it actually helped the relationships between clients and their accountants, because a lot of firms were very much on the front foot and were very proactive, like I was talking about. And in the end, I think what's happened as well is that clients did pay for a lot of this work. And because the government had put money in their hands, they had actually had money to pay for it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. All right, so I hear little birdie just talk to me on my little earpiece here, saying that you've got a few webinars coming up over the next few weeks. Do you know about that?
I do know about that.
Well, I'm glad that you're told like me. So that's okay, because I'd hate to say, "Hey, David, you got some webinars coming up," and you're like, "I don't know anything about this, Scotty." And yeah, so are you going to delve deep into some topics on these things?
So we're going to delve deep into that needs review process that we've been talking about here. How you should go about that, the type of questions you should be asking, how you should go about asking the questions, how you might structure your firm to be able to respond to the issues that the client might come up with, and how you might put together a proposal to deal with those issues, will be all the sorts of stuff that we will try and deal with in that particular webinar. I think we're then moving to a webinar which will be talking about capacity planning. So I've given you a very high level view today on what that capacity planning involves, but in that webinar we'll scratch the surface and get down to a bit of detail there about how you actually put a capacity plan together, the issues you need to think about, how you can actually create free capacity, what you can consider to expand your capacity if you've got a problem with lack of capacity, which most firms do. We can talk about that. And then lastly, we'll talk about the whole resource planning thing. And resource planning, in my mind, is something that every firm should consider. I've been responsible for getting quite a number of firms on the resource planning bus, and without exception, they all say that it's the most most beneficial change that they've ever made in their practice. It is a
Okay.
very difficult thing to do. It takes a couple of years to implement. There's a fair bit of work involved, but it fundamentally transforms that workflow in the business so you can provide better client service, have better engagement with your team, and run a better practice and give you that capacity to do that sort of better engagement with your client.
Okay. No, that sounds really good. Okay, so for those of you who want to join the webinar, I've put some links in the chat box. You can click on them. You can also watch this video again and get the links on there. But another way is you can go to our website, so www.xenium.partners, no.com, no.au, all that. We're well advanced here at Xenium. We don't need those things. That's so 2000s. And you can click on the Xenium Pro link up the top right there, and you can scroll down to past our shows, and here's the webinar, and you click there to register. And we click there, and it goes to the registration page. And there we go, David Smith from Smithink. Hey, David, I've been meaning to ask you, how long did it take you to think of your business name?
Oh, very funny. Actually, it's quite a funny story. I'll give you the quick executive summary. I was having a few glasses of wine with a few mates, and I was telling them I was trying to contemplate what an appropriate name for my business would be. And one of them, who was a marketing guy, said, well, it has to have your name in it because you're the business and it's about you. And I said, okay. And within 15 seconds of you saying that, I said Smithink. And it's just funny how the brain works, isn't it?
so is it Smith Inc. as in incorporated, or is it Smith?
No,
Smith
Smith and Think combined.
Yeah,
We're sharing
I
the
thought it
TH.
was.
We're
I
sharing the
thought that's
TH.
what it was. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah.
So, all right. So on the webinar, you've got hosted by Dina. We've got you, and we've got Todd from Xenium there, and you can have a chat. And those dates, I'll just go through the dates. Is Wednesday the 11th of May, Wednesday the 25th of May, and Wednesday the 1st of June. My goodness, we're already seeing dates for June, and it doesn't seem that long away.
It
That's a bit
doesn't say the
scary.
time there, Scott.
No, it doesn't, because I'm not an IT guy, David, and I'm just going to leave that there that you can register. And oh, here we go, down the bottom. I should probably scroll further, David, and it says 1 o'clock on all those dates. So there you go.
There you go. It doesn't say
Lunchtime.
whether it's Eastern Standard Time or so. It does say Sydney,
Well,
Sydney,
look,
Canberra,
there's no,
Melbourne.
yeah. Look, that's right. I mean, we always have that problem when I do the shows of, is it, which time is it? And I say it is SCT time, and they go, "What the hell's SCT time?" I say it's Scotty Central Time. Whatever time I'm at is the time that we need to use. Thank you very much. So there you go. So it's just David Central Time there at 1 p.m.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right. Look, it's been a pleasure, David. Thank you very much for your chat today.
Thanks, Scotty.
I'm glad that I could have a chat. As I said, I'm an absolute novice when it comes to anything accounting. I can use one of those high-tech things called a calculator, though. That's okay.
Good.
Yeah, I know. I've come a long way, mate. But it's really good to hear that the way that you come into a practice, the way that you approach with an open book, the way that each one's different, although there's some similar traits, and some of those things that I guess a lot of pain points that accountants can feel, so they feel like they're not alone, right? There's more than one person going through this, and you're here to be able to help them.
Yep.
So
Be a pleasure. Look forward to it. The next webinar's coming up.
yeah, that's it. That's very good. All right. Well, thank you very much. That was David from Smithink today talking to us about accounting practices and how he goes in, reviews them, checks them out, and makes the recommendations that he sees fit on all the different practices and all the different ways that he can do stuff and make things better for your clients, make them stickier, make them more profitable, make you more efficient as an accountant and an accountant practice. All right, that's it from our first Xenium Pro show, I think, for 2022, but we've got a lot more planned for the rest of the year. One a month on the first Thursday of every month, so come and join us for Xenium Pro, because we're here to make accountants, well, we make you money, we save you time, and we create value. That's what we do here at Xenium Pro, and that's it for today. So if you miss some of this, you're joining us now, you can click back and watch the repeat. You can comment anytime. Our team will be able to answer. And if you're even watching a repeat, they keep the lives up there and watch the repeat, or it's sent out to you, you can comment in those comment boxes and our teams will be able to answer you. You can also contact us via the website that's been scrolling at the bottom of the screen for the whole show. And if you scroll back about 5 minutes, you'll see where you can join up for the webinar, and the webinar links are in the chat boxes. There you go. I think I've covered everything. That's it from me. I'm Scotty North, and where we talk all things money, finance, and property on Xenium Pro. Have a great day.